Hello?
All right.
Yeah.
Hey,
That
Jameson,
sounds
are you
way
on the
better.
right Wi-Fi?
I switched to the closet one, so I think I am now.
Yeah, that's why you were dropping off before.
Yeah.
Get out of that closet.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the JavaScript Jabber podcast. This week on our panel, we have a special guest. That is Paul Irish.
Hello. Hi, guys.
Do you want to introduce yourself for the two people out there that don't know who you are?
Sure. So I am a front-end developer. I work on the Google Chrome team, and I do developer relations. I also manage the projects of Modernizer and HTML5 Boilerplate, and launch projects like HTML5 Please and Mother Effing Animated GIF and all sorts of good developer-facing fun stuff.
All right. Awesome. We also have on our panel AJ O'Neill
Hey, glad to be here again.
and Jameson Dance
Howdy.
and Joaquin Larson
Great to be here. In good company as always.
and Yehuda Katz.
Hey, psyched for Paul to be on today. Great to be here.
Yeah, me too. And I'm Charles Max Wood from teachmetocode.com. And this week we're going to be talking about Chrome developer tools. And I think we're all going to figure out real quick that there's a lot to know. So I'm a little curious as we get started, Paul, what features do you find that most people request the most often that's already there?
A lot. One good one is that okay, so this is actually probably the best one, which is why can't you guys just have those checkboxes for disabling styles on the left like every other tool? And so this has literally been like number one request for like 2 years. And as of about 24 hours ago, it's there. So okay, that one's a little not so obvious because unless you're running Chrome Canary and you've updated and you've restarted your browser in the past day, you haven't seen it. But I'm very happy to announce we now have checkboxes on the left. Might seem like a little deal, but it's a big deal for a lot of people.
I'm going to put in a request to move them to the right.
Very excited about that.
I'm looking at it right now. That's pretty awesome, Paul.
Yeah.
Kudos.
It's good. It's good. People they were just too far over, and like from a Fitz law perspective, it was really awkward, and so now it's nice and close and happy. It's good.
There is balance in the force once again.
Yeah, a lot of it is. So one thing I hear is like, it'd be really nice to be able to like refresh and not have to worry about a browser, my disk cache to be caching my things. Is there any way to like clear out my cache? And we don't exactly have a button to clear your cache, but we just have a setting in the DevTools settings to just disable cache. And so the DevTools settings is actually a good one so down in the bottom right of the DevTools is a little gear cog icon. And you click that and a bunch of cool stuff is in there. And especially if you're running Canary, there's even better stuff in there. But one of those is disable cache. And so your disk cache will just not even be honored. And so you'll always be getting the freshest things. Don't leave it on all the time because of course things will be slower, but that should help a lot when you're doing development.
Now, is that per tab or is it global?
That's global for the entire instance.
So,
okay.
Paul, by the way, so until you told me about that enable source maps thing, I actually didn't know that cog exists. So I want to put another like, hey, if anyone's listening and was not paying attention to what Paul just said, there is a cog there and there's useful things in there. I spent a very, very long time saying, okay, I'm just going to use Safari because there's a disable cache mode. I never knew about this. And I like the Chrome DevTools better.
Yeah,
Now,
everybody get over your cogless life.
Can't
It's there.
Can't you also do like Control-Shift-R and refresh that way?
That is not reliable. So
Okay.
basically, Chrome is actually pretty aggressive in caching, and often I'm like running. So specifically, I want cache off when I'm running tests.
Right.
I never ever ever want cache on in tests because it's always wrong.
And so there's a lot of cases where so if you're using something like a script dependency manager like require.js, like a script loader, a shift command R type of reload we'll actually not be fetching the brand new versions with when that script loader brings in its scripts. So disable cache is an instance where that would actually solve that problem.
Just a quick question. So disable cache only is on when the dev tools are running, or is this a global forever?
So I believe it's the setting is working as long as that box is checked, regardless of like if you have the DevTools pane open.
All right.
Okay.
I have a question for you, Paul.
Uh-huh.
So I know that WebKit Inspector added a like edit your contents a while ago, and me and Tom occasionally are like, hey, this is awesome, we should use it, and we can never get it to do what we want it to do. I think it's mostly because we always want to be able to refresh and have the edit still there. Maybe that's just not how it works. But what is the use case as you see it for that feature?
So for keeping track of your changes to CSS and JavaScript?
So letting you basically go and live edit CSS and JavaScript. So for us, if we live edit JavaScript, most of the time we're going to want to reload the page because the thing that we're editing has already happened.
Yep.
But then it's nuked.
Yep. So we have right now the workflow for that. So what Yehuda's talking about is we have live edit. And there's a few ways that this sort of. Sorry, what?
I love it.
Yeah, it's so good. And so it's really quite surprising in JavaScript that you could just open up the scripts tab and double click and just start changing things. And, like you changing a click handler to have some different behavior. And then you click that button again, and it does the new behavior that you just typed.
Wait.
Refresh it all.
You're saying you can live edit JavaScript, not just the CSS?
Yeah, that's what, yes.
My God. I'm one of those people you were talking about at the beginning.
No, I mean, it's okay. Like all of this is
that.
coming in the last
so
year.
Nice.
It's all very new.
The CSS show is on the other channel.
Script.
That's right. So you can live edit, you can make those changes, you can see it, you can get something to what you want. Then you go over to the resources panel. Under resources, you're going to see your JavaScript, and next to the file that you were editing, you're going to see a little arrow pointing down or pointing to the right. And it's just indicating that it's keeping track of all your revisions. And so there's a revision history, and you can revert back to a previous revision before your edits. You also can see colored diffs on what exactly you changed or added. And you can right click the JavaScript file and save that to disk. So you just right click, say save to disk, and declare where it goes, and it overwrites your existing file or what have you. There are currently 2 Chrome extensions that try and make that a little bit better, because always going over to resources and clicking save to disk and bringing up the file prompt and hitting save is kind of annoying. And so there's 2 autosave extensions. So we'll have these in the show notes, but one is called DevTools Autosave and the other is called Auto Dev Save, maybe. It's very, very similar. And right now the 2 authors are trying to merge the best of both. But essentially the pattern that both are offering is you make your changes and immediately those changes are just saved back to disk. And so then when you refresh the page, it's loading up the changes that you had just put in through the DevTools, which is the kind of development workflow that you want.
Is there a world in which that feature gets into the Chrome tools themselves?
I think so. And I think mostly the engineering team would just love to hear about people's experience with that and would want to see people file bugs requesting that. So if you like that, file a ticket.
I didn't know about me and Tom are probably gonna start using this because that's definitely for CSS it's really cool. You make the change, it's basically live. But for JavaScript, 99% of the time when something has gone wrong, I actually want to redo the thing I just did that went wrong.
Yep.
And obviously, so like click handlers will be there, but I can't make the state go back to 0. So.
Right. So one other question that I have is, where's the debugger? Is there a debugger?
Yeah.
Script debugger?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of debugging capability for script in the DevTools. And so we have in the scripts panel, you bring up a script. You can click along the left side and place breakpoints. You can right click and place conditional breakpoints that only break when a condition passes. let's say that your JavaScript was minified. You can hit the pretty print button at the bottom, which is the two braces, and minify it, and then you can place your breakpoints all over the pretty printed and formatted JavaScript. And then so the debugger works like any other debugger does, and you have step into and step over and pause and disable breakpoints. We've been refining a lot of the things that are in there. So now there's a way to remove all the breakpoints all at once, which was a big request. And
what is that way?
What?
What is the way to remove all the breakpoints?
So in the right-hand pane where it lists out what the breakpoints are, if you just right-click on one of them, there's remove breakpoint and there's remove all breakpoints.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
And one of the other cool features that I came across recently, which is if you're stepping through and you're looking at like your scoped variables, and one of them is a function reference, you can actually right-click on that function reference, and in that context menu will be show function definition. So the DevTools are getting really smarter in kind of navigating from function to function, method to method. And so you can kind of jump around to where these things are defined that you're using at different places.
I actually noticed sometime recently the DevTools made it so that the object inspector calls toString on classes instead of saying class.
It does. That's good.
So I maybe I was seeing something crazy, a ghost in the machine, but so Ember has a toString on all classes, and it's like one of our banner features. And for a long time, we have to tell people like, hey, make sure you type toString if you want to know what it is, and blah, blah, blah. And I was noticing, so just a plug, Tom did like a whole debugging video for a talk recently at a meetup, and it's basically like a whole like, hey, did you know all these things about debugging? Here's basically our workflow. But while we were doing that, we noticed that all the Ember classes actually had their names, which is actually pretty cool, because before it used to say class, and that was pretty terrible.
Yeah, so if you are defining your own classes and you want to have better debuggability, just define your toString, and you'll be able to get that as output inside the DevTools, which is a bit better than working with object.
Yep.
And while we're over talking about the scripts panel, it's a little hard to do in audio, but I would encourage everyone to check out Canary. So just so everyone knows, Chrome Canary can run side by side with any other Chrome install. So for developers, I really recommend running a Chrome Stable, which everyone has, and then a Chrome Canary. So you know what users are looking at, and then you can play with the freshest dev tools and the other fresh features. Canary
where
updates once a day. Just Google Chrome Canary.
Okay.
And it's a quick download. So it updates once a day. And it's not that buggy either. It's quite stable, so it's great. But one of the new features that we have in there is a script navigator. And so before, if you've been in scripts and you want to like bring up one of the files, you see that all your Chrome extensions are also listed in there. Mm-hmm. And now there's a nice way that those are separated out, your Chrome extension scripts and your own application ones. They're all kind of categorized based on what origin they're from, what folder they're in, and it's really nice to work with. And there's even nice shortcuts like Command O and Command Shift O that are jumping between files and jumping between function definitions within files. So if you find yourself wanting to navigate around a lot, the DevTools are very cognizant of where all these functions are defined, and you can just jump immediately to where you want to go with a quick shortcut.
One little thing, I'm going to Chrome Canary now, and I see it says for Windows, XP, Vista, and 7 only. Your operating system is not supported on Ubuntu.
On Linux? Yep, this is true. We do not offer a Chrome Canary for Linux, which is just a bummer. For Linux, my suggestion is to go to download-chromium.appspot.com. And so the Chromium builds are about an hour old. So whereas Canary updates once a day, a Chromium build, there's a new Chromium build binary once an hour or so. So so that's the solution there. And you have to update it on your own, which is kind of a bummer, but that's just where it's at right now.
And there's no difference between Chromium and Chrome in this context.
Correct.
So are the dev and alpha channels that used to be in the repositories done away, or?
No. So we still have the beta channel and the dev channel.
So isn't the dev channel Canary more or less?
Dev channel updates once a week.
Okay.
So that's the only difference. So it depends on how much you want it to change. The downside that I've seen with dev channel is if a bug does sneak into it, you're stuck with it for a week, mostly. But if a bug sneaks into Canary, you're pretty much stuck with it for about a day. And I've been running on Canary for as my primary browsing browser for about a year now, and I've had very little problems.
Nice. So, Mike, I have a question, and that is, how do you decide which features go in? Is it the most popular, or do you decide what would add the most value? Or
it's a bit of all of that. Certainly, so checkboxes is a good example of one where we just had an overwhelming public demand for it. Another one that is brand new is single click edit. So in CSS, one of the big differences between Firebug and Chrome DevTools is if you're editing CSS, it takes a double click in Chrome to get into the edit mode of CSS, whereas in Firebug it's a single click, and we just switched it so that it's now a single click. Small little thing, but I think people prefer it. So sometimes it's that. Other times it's, people really need ways to debug, ways to see their IndexedDB storage. And so we were working with the guys who implemented IndexedDB support in Chrome to get good support for that inside the DevTools. And so that just landed behind a flag earlier today. And so part of it is just platform driven. Part of it is from what we hear. Another is we have a crazy idea and we're going to try it out and see if people like it. So it's kind of a mix of all these things. But you can kind of track there's a few ways to track the evolution of the DevTools. The best to kind of get a feel for what's happening from week to week is Peter Beverlew's blog. So it's at peter.sh. And Peter talks about what's happening in all of WebKit and Chrome from a week-to-week basis. And he covers a lot of what's happening inside the Chrome DevTools. And so if you've been reading that, you read this week that a color picker just landed. And so now if there's a little color swatch, you click it and up pops a little graphical color picker, which is pretty handy. So Peter's blog covers that, and you can also watch the Chromium bugs at crbug.com, and also the WebKit bugs at bugs.webkit.com. And both of them have a category for Chrome DevTools or the inspector. It's the same thing, different names. And you can jump on, watch different bugs, add yourself to the CC, chime in if you have any feedback that would help, and kind of get a feel for where the tool is heading.
So you mentioned just kind of like wacky, crazy ideas as one of the source of things. I don't know if you've seen that video by Brett Victor, Inventing on Principle. Yeah. Seen that? So
yeah, it's incredible.
I want that stuff in the
Chrome want that so much.
Developer tools. Like, I mean, is there any chance of anything more interactive like that? So he basically, he's like an interface designer from 1,000 years in the future. I don't know. He's pretty amazing. But he demonstrates this editor where he has a canvas on one side and on the other side he has his code, and he just kind of clicks on these constants in his code to change the numbers, and he can see it changing how it draws on the canvas live on the other side. And it's amazing. He has a couple other demos on there that are pretty incredible, but
so that's like what Processing.js does, like the Processing.js demo site.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but maybe.
Sorry.
But is there any chance of anything more interactive like he showed in that showing up in the developer tools?
Definitely a chance of it. I think
Obviously, it'd be really non-trivial to implement generally, and he's doing it in a really specialized way.
Right. So doing that inside CSS would be a good first step, and that's not too hard. If you've seen, when I saw that, it reminded me a lot of what Leah Veru did with Dablet. And so in Dablet, you can kind of get a little pop-up preview of lengths of like in transitions, how long my timing is, even what the easing function looks like when charted out as a curve, and being able to have a little pop-up with a slider where I can just adjust from pixels, from 10 pixels to 20 pixels and just change that on the fly graphically, be pretty rad. And then when it comes into JavaScript, it would be really cool to kind of have a GUI to edit your JavaScript on the fly. I think that's incredibly powerful, and the team has been looking at it. And if we can figure out a UI that scales and works, then awesome. And if anyone else has an idea for how that could work inside the DevTools, please feel free to send me your design. This is like an open source project, so we're really happy to get other people's ideas on how this could work. In fact, the color picker that I just mentioned was written by an external contributor. I think he's based in Missouri, maybe. And he actually worked with me on the mother effing animated GIF that I mentioned before. And he just made the color picker code and integrated it into the inspector source code, and now it's in. So certainly, if you have some ideas, we'd love to try and figure out how to make it work inside the scope of the project.
So the UI itself for developer tools is written in JavaScript, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a web app, and when you bring that up, you're just looking at JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. And so if you can open the DevTools on the DevTools and just poke around them if you want, it works.
So this sounds really interesting for. Just a really interesting way to work with code and something I like. But how do you design in a way that you can have your build tools where you're compiling your JavaScript together and also have that freedom of being able to have the development easily editable? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Okay. So are you saying everyone should have a build process to make sure that they're optimized for production, but once you're optimized for production, it makes it quite more difficult to start to do debugging?
Well, I'm saying, for example, in my development code, I just have everything concatenated together, but I don't have it minified. So if I were to edit that file, it wouldn't do me any good. And I guess I could come up with some sort of process for having every single file included individually as a script tag in the page. Or then, there's people working with CoffeeScript and that kind of thing. So it raises the question, with all of this capability of being able to do so much in the browser, where do the build tools fit in, and how do they mold into that process?
AJ, I am glad you asked. This basically introduces the concept of source maps, and source maps are the solution to this issue. The idea behind source maps is that we want to be able to map some version of a source code back to another form. And so this was an effort that was kind of a joint effort between some developers at Mozilla and some of the Google Closure guys and the Chrome DevTools guys. And it's now been implemented into Chrome, so you can try it out in Canary. But essentially, so one way to you can try this out, which is you have to turn on the feature. But let's say that you have your myapp.min.js. That is a minified version of 6 different JavaScript files that have been concatenated, run through Closure compiler, and is now in your app in production.
Yeah, that sounds pretty mangled.
Yeah, exactly. You can bring it into the scripts tab and you can hit prettify, but you're still going to be looking at var A equals blank, var B equals whatever. So source maps allow you to basically map that minified and concatenated file back to the original 6 source files And so by essentially turning that on and having an associated map file, you can now bring up the script debugger and debug in your original 6 source files, all completely correctly formatted, walk through with breakpoints and debugging, and live edit and get those changes over in revision history. Okay, maybe not live edit. That might be a little bit much. But essentially,
it seems like you could probably.
It
seems like you could theoretically do a reverse source map, but that's definitely not a thing that people have done.
Yeah. And so this is really exciting. So not only can you deal with that issue of I have production code, but I would that is not conducive for me to debug it. But it also means that it enables CoffeeScript debugging. And so I can be able to set breakpoints in CoffeeScript and walk through my code there. And even though the browser is really interpreting it as the compiled JavaScript. So this has actually just kind of landed over the past few months and is now kind of a reality. I know CoffeeScript in particular, the project has to land a few patches. And so those are not available yet. And I think mostly the people don't really have a good feeling for the fact that this exists and what this functionality means. But it means that inside the Chrome DevTools, you're able to set breakpoints in your CoffeeScript files that look like CoffeeScript and walk through them. And the DevTools are doing the hard work of mapping those source files to the compiled JS that it's actually interpreting.
Yeah, I've actually been working on adding source map support to Rake Pipeline, which is like my old thing in Ruby. And I think there's a little bit of a tooling issue still. There's like the Clojure guys have their like Java. So the actual source map format is not good, right? It's not like human readable at all. And it's not, but it's efficient. And so I think there's Mozilla has something for Node, and I am working on something in Ruby. But I think in general, getting the tooling to like, here's how you generate a source map. Please do not read the spec. Use this library is necessary to get to a point where more people use it.
Yeah, I think for most people are not going to actually be having to figure out how to generate the source maps. They're even going to be using them through Clojure compiler, through CoffeeScript, or letting people like Yehuda figure out how it works for them. So,
well, I think any tool that does so right now the hack for concatenation is source URL, but source URL requires eval, and that's unpleasant. And I think anybody who does any kind of concatenation tool should at the very least do a minimal source map for the original concatenation.
Absolutely.
And that means that it's more than just like 3 people, right? It's going to be a few dozen people.
Right.
And
getting this into Uglify would be key as well.
Exactly.
So, can we get some links for this in the show notes?
Yeah.
Because I haven't.
We're gonna have links everywhere in the show notes. It's gonna be
so
good.
Yeah, we're gonna have a 1-hour show, and then Paul is gonna spend another hour giving us links.
Well, I would like that because the source map thing. Haven't really heard of it yet. I'm Googling for it right now to see if I can come up with
it's ungoogleable. Ungoogleable,
bro. Is out there.
Yeah,
I'm working
that was my
on an
experience
article
too.
with Ryan Seddon on this to basically highlight it. But yeah, there's not a lot of content out there right now.
Somewhat related to this, what about Node.js debugging via Chrome tools?
Yeah, that's crazy. How does that work?
So it's cool because basically there is a debugging protocol that is specified and published for how
Xdebug?
Sorry, for what?
Not Xdebug.
I don't think so. No, but
that would be kind of cool as well. I mean, that would give the ability to even debug a PHP or whatever else.
Oh, that's exciting. But so the protocol is published for how the WebKit inspector handles debugging, and so there's a project called Node Inspector that just mapped up Node's debug mode into this. And so you can just use the front end of the Chrome DevTools, or sorry, the WebKit inspector, same thing. Use that front end and to walk through in a GUI what walk through your node code.
Can you get the spec for that in the show notes or put it in the chat room?
Yeah.
I've looked for it a few times, like, hey, I think I can do something with this, and I can never find the actual spec.
Sure. Yeah, it's on the it's available through the Chrome DevTools Google Code site around the extension stuff. But yeah, that'll be in there.
Cool.
Now, one thing that I thought you said was that Chrome is open source.
Chromium, the web browser, is totally open source. Chrome is a version of Chromium that has some extra things like a PDF viewer and support for H.264 codec, but pretty much they're functionally equivalent with some very, very minor differences.
So is there a good place to go and see the source code for some of this stuff?
Yeah. So if you just Google Chrome DevTools, the site for that should come up. And it's on Google Code. And there's a little link right on that front page called Peruse the Source. And it brings you over to Google Code Search. And you should just be able to walk through it. So there's like 30 JavaScript files that the DevTools are based off of. And you can just kind of read through how that application is architected, which is pretty crazy. But it's a lot of fun to look through. I recently posted on my blog about using box sizing border box for all your layout. And the Chrome DevTools is actually one of the web apps where I first noticed this in play, where they're just using box sizing border box to make their layout calculation a lot easier. And so I learned that trick from reading the source of this. And there's a few other really cool things going on inside of it.
So out of curiosity, is there any pressure on you to put Dart support into Chrome DevTools?
So I think, so for Dart, there are two ways that Chrome DevTools can essentially handle that. One is through source mapping, just like kind of what we talked about with CoffeeScript.
Right.
And I haven't seen that happen yet. But the Dart folks also recently released Dartium, which is a build of Chromium with a Dart VM baked into it. And it also already comes with the DevTools support. So there's essentially already support, for Dart in one way over there.
Cool. What's your feeling on Dart? How's that going?
Dart's cool. Dart has I think Dart's exciting and provides a lot of control and a different development experience than you get with JavaScript because it has types, because it has module system already baked in. It has a lot of features that can be very exciting for folks. Certainly, as far as using it, you can compile it down to JavaScript and you can run it in all modern browsers. But you need ES5 support, so it's not like you can write Dart code, compile it down to JavaScript, and see it run in IE7.
Really?
So you're a little restricted there.
It needs ES5 support?
Yeah.
Cool story, bros.
So there's that, and but I see a lot of like Flex developers, other developers that aren't attracted to JavaScript as a language, and they like what they see with Dart, and so they're playing around with it. Yeah.
Just to go back for a second, we were talking before about like IDE environments with Chrome DevTools, and personally I use Cloud9 IDE locally.
Cool.
And I was kind of interested because Cloud IDE itself has a debugging interface as well, but that's mostly for the Node part, the Node.js part. And I was just you were asking for suggestions there, and I was kind of wondering if that couldn't be something interesting. Like if you're saying it's open, the API for the debugger is open, and it can do remote debugging, I would suppose.
Yeah,
so that might be something that could be interesting there.
Absolutely, I think that we might have talked to the Cloud9 folks about this before. But any web-based IDE could kind of hook into what the Chrome DevTools are doing and either provide a new UI for the functionality of the debugger or other parts of it, or your changes in the DevTools could be immediately reflected inside the IDE. There's some interesting integrations that are available there that I think we're going to be seeing more of.
Awesome. It's a great time to be alive.
Yeah, totally.
Yep. All right, we've got a few minutes before we need to get into the picks. Really quickly, I wanted to go over some of the other stuff that you do. You talked about mother effing something GIFs, animated GIFs, and you've also got what was it? It was like an HTML5.
HTML5 please.
HTML5. What was that?
HTML5 please. HTML5 readiness. CSS3 please. Move the web forward. It's a lot of those kind of sites.
There was another one. It was like a baseline for CSS or something.
The HTML5 boilerplate?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So HTML5 boilerplate, we recently released the 3.0. But it's a fun project. It initially started as kind of I recognized all these things were being reused from project to project. And so why don't we just create a starting template to save ourselves time when we create a new project? And then it just kind of grew. So not only is it this is to save time, but these are the best practices of the front-end development community. These are the links to see why they're the best practices. And this is the best way to put them to use. And so it's kind of become a somewhat of a community-managed clearinghouse of all the best ways to do things in a cross-browser environment, in an HTML5 environment, for everyone. So, and one of the other important things that we did is we built in a build tool as a default. So anyone getting started with the library has a build script that runs through, does their JavaScript, concat and minify, same with CSS, even can minify HTML, although it turns out that there's very little benefit in that. It optimizes images, which I think people don't do nearly enough. But I think I wanted to have a lot of this stuff just as easy as possible. A test suite that's immediately hooked up so that you don't have an excuse like, oh, writing tests is hard. Well, I guess you do still have the writing tests is hard excuse. You just don't have the wiring up a test suite to my scripts is so hard. So that's all.
By the way, Paul, we you know this already, but Ember uses HTML5 boilerplate as our starting point for our starter kit project. So.
And it should be the other way around too.
Yeah. We've kept things as simple as we can. Well, kept things as baseline as we can. But folks are asking about modules and how we're going to deal with that, and certainly I think it's a good time to be able to define some better things in a project like the HTML5 boilerplate regarding building an application stack. So I've been thinking a lot about this recently. Yeah,
I was going to ask about that. I mean, isn't it difficult to say like, okay, this is the best practice? I mean, we're all with our limited insights and experience and stuff like that. I mean, isn't it difficult to say like, well, this is the way we should be doing it? Obviously, you have a community that kind of gives input, but I mean, how mature is our community?
Sure. I mean, okay, so I think we know how to clear floats, and there's a best practice on that. Is there a best practice on including other modules of JavaScript? Like Shepherd.js came out 2 days ago, provides a way to essentially somewhat polyfill ES6 Harmony modules in ES5 land. And that looks pretty cool and provides a different way of doing it than using AMD modules. So should we come out and say that this is the right way to do it? Well, it's really hard to say. So certainly, right, depending on the maturity of each kind of level of building web apps, it gets more controversial, more hard to come out and say what the de facto best practice is. But my belief is that we need to, because I am tired of every developer being faced with this paradox of choice of all these different options. Yeah, so I think the more that the community can define what the best practices are and reduce the number of options that all developers have, the better.
I think it's very of the moment to say, how do you really know? Maybe there's choices. Every developer should read the source of everything they use. Everybody should think about it. But at the end of the day, all that means is that the millions of developers who are writing websites are all having to pay these multi-week long costs to do these full evaluations. And we, like you said, we know how to clear floats, but I think it goes beyond that. I think we know a lot of things, and we should we should stop playing to the JavaScript Illuminati that wants everybody to be everybody. They want everyone to be me. They want everyone to be Jeremy Ashkenaz, and that's just not realistic.
Right.
And I think it's not reasonable that those of us who are very good at JavaScript and actually spend a lot of time doing evaluations foist that entire responsibility on everyone else.
Right.
Absolutely.
There's a long tail of Joe developers out there.
Rant over.
Yep. All right. So one last question. With Chrome, it seems like it's constantly under development. I mean, I leave it up for days on end, so I don't always get the updates right when they come out. But you seem to have a lot of movements with moving things forward, using HTML5, using CSS3, using the new standards. How does Chrome fit into that? Do they tend to innovate quickly on those things, or do they wait until more people want to use them?
Chrome as a browser, as a platform is very aggressive, and in fact, the goal of Google Chrome is to move the web forward. You go to the Chromium Google Code project, that's what it says. And so the goal of Chrome was not only to create a fast browser, but also to ignite a browser race towards speed and towards making things better. And so Chrome's very focused on that. We have a 6 week release cycle typically. So every browser, a new stable version of the browser comes out every 6 weeks. The other more important part than the fact that we ship every 6 weeks is all of our users are updated over the course of a few days. So I think we have 200 million users, and all of those get the update and are running the new version of Chrome over the course of a week, which is pretty rad, and we're excited about that. And so we're always trying to find ways to kind of be able to let the web platform move faster, iterate better, and get to the right solutions as fast as we can.
All right, terrific. Well, we're going to go ahead and get into the picks. I checked my email to make sure that we had warned you about picks, because we've had people come on and go, oh, I didn't know about those, and that's my fault. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get those out there. Yehuda, what are your picks?
So I signed up for the MITx course on electronics, and I realized that so I went to look at the prerequisites, and it's like, hey, linear algebra and physics, and I'm like, I haven't taken those in like 10 years. So I went back to look at the OpenCourseWare stuff, and OpenCourseWare has a lot of the courses have been rejiggered into what they call the Scholar program, which is basically the OpenCourseWare courses are basically just a bunch of material thrown up on the website. The Scholar versions are basically divided up into online modules with videos and problems and sort of designed around training. And sort of a micro pick is, so I've been doing the linear algebra course, and Gilbert Strang is the professor there, and he is if anybody out there ever learned linear algebra and found it confusing the first time around, he is so much of a better professor than the one I had in college, even watching him on video. I understand the whole area. The way I learned it originally was very memorization oriented, and the way he teaches is very conceptual. And my brain likes to learn math conceptually, not memorizationally. So MIT OpenCourseWare, electronics course, specifically Scholar stuff, and the Gilbert Strang linear algebra course in MIT OpenCourseWare.
His textbook is fantastic too.
I bought it. It's awesome.
All right. Jameson, what are your picks?
So one of them is definitely Inventing on Principle, that video that we talked about by Brett Victor. It's incredible. It's an hour long, and it's well worth your time to watch. He shows these amazing interfaces that he's done, and he also talks about what drives him to create things, and it's just great. Another one is a thing called CodeMirror, which is a way of embedding executable code in your website. I've seen people use it for like inline executable examples when they're doing blog posts and stuff. So I'm in the process of trying to get that up on my website, on my blog, and it's pretty cool. And then my last one is just D3. It's a visualization library for JavaScript that is really fun to play with and makes some really neat graphics. So I'll put those in the show notes too. But them's my picks.
All right. AJ, what are your picks?
So yesterday I had lunch with the HTML5 Provo group, and pretty neat bunch of guys there as well. So if you're in Utah, pick them, right? And then, I just was reminded the other day of how much I like local business. I was looking at getting some business cards because I'm doing some DJing on the side, and like Vistaprint is super complicated. Like you can't even get to their checkout from the cart area without going through like 10 advertisements. And so there was this, I happened to be getting a haircut right by this place that does signs and graphics and that kind of thing, and popped in and talked with a guy and local owner. And, he just liked what he did and liked helping people. And it's just so nice to have that, community for whatever it is you might be interested in purchasing or service or whatever.
Cool. All right. Joaquin, what are your picks?
I'll go with 3JS, just in talking about pushing the web forward. 3JS is a library for helping to write WebGL programs.
All right.
It's a framework for that. And also I'll go with Quake 2 WebGL, which is an implementation or a port of Quake 2 in WebGL that you can play in your browser.
Quake.
Yeah.
Railgun. Anyway.
Well, I'm a little bit, upset that it's Quake 2 and not Quake 1, which is, what I grew up with. I was like, keeping it real. Quake 2 was too slow.
Yeah, I think I played Quake 3 in college. Anyway. I suppose I'm next. One of the picks that I have is something that I picked up for a couple of my websites. I'm paying somebody to actually do the design for one of my websites. It's going to be a rather large website. And anyway, I was looking around to see what other options there were, and some friends pointed me to themeforest.net. And themeforest.net is just a place where you can go and get HTML layouts. Some of them actually use some of the jQuery plugins to do like animation of different images, so you can you can click back and forth and you can see different images and stuff like that. But mostly it's just general HTML and CSS, and it's something that I found a couple that I liked, and so hopefully those work out for me as far as the websites that I'm building. And that's the only pick I really have for this week. So we'll let Paul give us some picks.
Nice. Okay. I just wanted to first thing mention on Joaquin's pick of 3JS. One of the interesting things is that 3 renders, has a renderer built in for WebGL, but it also has renders built in for 2D Canvas and SVG. But if you might have seen Acco.net recently got a redesign, has this crazy header up top, and it uses 3JS. And the guy behind that wrote a renderer for 3JS with 3D transforms. And so that just came out. So you can now create a scene in the 3JS library and actually render it in transforms, which is pretty wild. Wow. A pick of mine that I had is from the commit log of prototype.js. Andrew DuPont made a recent commit, and he used a little syntax trick that I didn't understand. So I asked him for some detail on GitHub, and it's 3 right angle brackets, and it's called a zero fill right shift bitwise operator. And essentially it's a ES3 compatible trick that is like ES5's toInt32 operation, but essentially it coerces strings to numbers and false values to 0, and it's just kind of cool. Another pick that I have is DOM mutation observers. So if you've used mutation events before, you should take a look at mutation observers, which are available in Chrome Stable now. They have performance that is somewhere around 500 times better. I'm just going to throw that number out there. It's a lot faster. And that was recently shipped. We have a bunch of information about that on HTML5 Rocks, along with a JavaScript library which sits on top and basically summarizes the DOM changes. And so that's really, really good if you're writing any sort of browser extension that hacks an existing page, but it also allows you to kind of watch the DOM and respond to it in a kind of brand new way.
Also, Canary has now, I don't know if it's in existing Chrome, but Canary has like checkboxes you can check off to watch specific mutation observers.
Yep.
Which is pretty awesome.
And I think my last is to do MVC, which is the project which tries to have the same app written in a number of different client-side MVC frameworks. Released a new version 0.3. They have new apps for Dojo and Clojure and updates for some of the existing ones. So as always, if like we were saying, we think it's terrible that everyone has to do a technology evaluation on their own. But if you're doing that, to do MVC has a good showing of the current options and how the code looks for each of them.
All right, terrific. So just to wrap things up, I want to let folks know that they can get the show notes, and there will be lots of links at javascriptjabber.com. You can also give us feedback and suggest show topics for us by going to javascriptjabber.com and clicking on Request a Topic, or clicking the feedback tab that's just kind of floating there at the bottom of the website. Other than that, I just want to thank Paul for coming again. It's always fun to have a guest, especially somebody as knowledgeable about the subject matter as he is. And we'll catch you all next week. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
See ya.
Enjoy.